Hello, everyone. Brian Wong. I'm going to make the case that we'll have a four-seat cybercab as the low-cost Tesla vehicle, and that it will. I'm going to say exactly how much of the new manufacturing called the unboxed process will be used. So, unboxed four-seat vehicle that looks similar to the cybercab is what I think is going to happen. So, I have a few slides on that, and then we'll have a discussion with Randy Kirk about what I believe is going to happen.
As a starting point, though, Brian, when you say look similar, do you think there's a chance that it would have a longer body style than the cab? It's just to kind of have the same look.
I think it will end up being because the two-seat cybercab is has room for a back row seat.
Mhm.
But I think it will be pretty much exactly the same vehicle
All right. Okay. All right.
that way. So we have the unbox process. So people don't know, it's making a bunch of modules and then bringing them all together into a final assembly where it comes together. We put, like front and rear castings and then the side panels and stuff all kind of come together. This is looking more like the Model Y because that's when they introduced it. It looked like that. Um, Connecting the dots has two different sections where they go over all the parts, all the segments of this unbox process in detail, like having no paint, color impregnated plastics, which is molded, it's sheet molding compound is what it is. So then you mold it into what is the panels of the cybercab, and currently they use two pieces, that kind of left and right to it, and they just kind of snap it together.
And
Steer
I
by
think,
wire. Okay.
and what I was surprised to hear, Brian, was that this is the method that they already do use for the bumpers and some of the fenders.
Right, right. So they're already using that in some parts, but they need to get up to scale doing it for a lot of cybercabs
Right.
next year.
And a much
So
larger piece, much larger part.
right, right. So then the more you can do with that, and then there's also break by wire, steer by wire, which are things that were done for the Cybertruck, and then we have all the casting of the components. The other parts are, the other wiring and other snap to fit parts, um, and also some
You
other
said that a
wiring.
little fast.
Sorry, snap to
Snap to
fit.
fit parts is
Yeah,
a big piece of what makes this thing work. And
right.
I love the people that talk about it in terms of a Lego set. Since
Mhm.
I have raised two boys and how many grandsons now, I forget. I've been stepping on Legos for about 40 years now.
Mhm.
Um, you're it's like if you had set up, you have a Lego setup, but
Mhm.
instead of using the Lego instructions,
Mhm.
you have a really big one and you build the tower over here and you build this over here of the wall of the castle here, another wall of
Mhm.
the castle over here. And you got all these segments that you put together. And then at the end, you're able to just snap them all together and finish your project.
Right. The other part of it is to parallelize. So basically make 10 or 15 different pieces and then bring them all together, giant Legos, like you're talking about, into one final assembly. That way, instead of taking 10 hours to go from one end of the factory to another, I spend 1 hour making the 10 different modules and then snap them together and maybe get it all done in an hour and a half or 2 hours to get the faster construction. But for
Right.
the first car, the low cost version, the Model Q or whatever we're going to call it, the they're going to keep the Model 3 and Y lines mostly the same, right? Because they said that that's what their halfway construction was going to be. That's what they said,
Mhm.
about a year ago now, that they would do that, right? So, what are the pieces of that process that would be the easiest, biggest bang for the buck to bring in? And that's the sheet molding compound to make the body, right? Then I don't have to do painting. And painting is a huge, use a lot of area of the
Right.
factory. I'll take a bunch of time. And if you do the sheet molding compound, that popping in a mold and popping out a mold thing is only a few pieces of equipment.
Hmm.
right? It's not that big an area.
Hmm.
So if I'm going down the Model 3 line, making my vehicle, and then I get to the painting part, I say, okay, instead of painting, this vehicle goes off to do the sheet molding compound area, and then make the body, and then the other part is painted, and then we come back together, right? And then we finish off whatever we're gonna finish off. So it's an easy way, and it can can, according to Grok, give us a 10 to 15% boost. Could save 1 to 1.5 hours of the
Wow.
construction.
Hmm.
And it could be a $2,000, $3,000 saving per car.
Wow.
So that goes to, because it's such a huge savings, because I need to master this at scale for the cybercab next year,
Hmm.
then I need to do the same kind of body for the new vehicle.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Um,
which you've been saying for a while, and
mm,
which I have been, you know, curiously interested in believing that you could be right. What I'm wondering though is, as much as everybody loves the design of the cybercab, whether you want long term the cybercab to look identical to the consumer version. Now you could do it
mm.
with color, just make it a different color. You could do it with wraps. There's a lot of things you could do. But what do you think? Do you really, is there a huge advantage to using exactly the same body style as opposed to giving it a little different body style to differentiate it?
I guess in theory you could do a slightly different body style. It is possible you can make it bigger. It could be more Model Y size, right?
Hmm.
Instead of the smaller vehicle. The advantage of making it the smaller vehicle is that the smaller Cybercab apparently can get 300 miles of range
Right,
from a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack.
right.
So if I have same size and of the same, I can probably get a 55 kilowatt hour battery pack and then do it.
Yeah.
So that is an argument for let's go to the small size. The other thing about the smaller size is that for the China market and for the European market, they want cheaper cars.
Hmm.
So if I make it smaller, I save $1,000, $2,000
Right.
off the body. And that is a huge deal for getting us to the sub $25,000 vehicle.
I was thinking more like the familiar thing. And again, it doesn't have to be familiar. That's one of Tesla's recent things to do is to make the cars look completely different than what is familiar. But you know, a lot of people are expecting it to be a hatchback. Oh, and the fact that they're doing this with plastic as opposed to metal fabrication, maybe Larry Goldberg and Steve Mark Ryan are 100% convinced it's more than one vehicle because they kept saying models, not model, and cars, not car. Maybe it would be a hatchback and a sedan.
So the sheet molding compound means that I can make different body shapes. I can make the hatchback.
Yeah,
I'm just popping on the top shell,
right.
and it's only like two, maybe three parts that I'm doing. So the fact that I could make a hatchback, I could make a stubby thing. So then the ease of molding these things into the different shapes, I mean, they
Mhm.
can get three different body styles very, very
Right,
easily,
right.
right? So to your point, yes, coming out with three versions, I can see, like I said, because of the battery thing, wanting a small one,
Hmm.
but then having a full up Model Y size or a Model Y hatchback or some other thing like that is easy with the sheet molding compound. Because I think it's very similar to um, the GM Saturn vehicle, where
Right,
it was just a molded plastic thing
right.
and you're just like popping it all together. And they also, the Saturn, and actually drove one, I owned one for a while, had a lot of snap to fit
Mm,
parts
mm,
inside the vehicle.
mm,
Because it was, for people who haven't ridden it, they had like a lot of plastic outside. You could hit it and wouldn't dent because it's all
hmm.
plastic.
Yeah.
And then I had my car parked one time and a young driver 17 years old who did not wipe his window.
Mm,
So he was like driving blind,
mm,
ran into the back of my vehicle. And when I went in, the mid panel where the radio and other and air conditioning stuff was had come down,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
it had snapped to fit. So I just like popped it back
Oh.
in, and it snapped back in. And I looked in the back, and basically there was no damage because they hit it at a low enough speed
Yeah,
that because it had this, plasticky bumper that could handle it. So snapping to fit, it's been done before, like I said, for the Saturn. And you can do different body shapes relatively easy. You can just mold it into a different shape,
right,
and I'm done. They're just going on top of the same skateboard platform.
right. And of course, as a marketing guy, I'm always looking at when you're going down market, you want to differentiate the car and Tesla from its more expensive cousins. You don't want those more expensive cousins to be out of business. You don't want them to be cannibalized too much. And so Tesla has talked about the fact they didn't want to take away anything really important or really, they wanted to keep it a very, very nice car. But one of the things that if you're going to do the plastic molded parts, you're not going to get the luster. You're not going to get the depth of the paint job that you're getting on the higher quality cars. And the paint job on the Teslas is phenomenal. So you're not going to get that part of it. And that alone would give it a little bit of a down market feel compared to the lustrous layers after layers after layers of paint that they're putting on the more expensive product.
Right. But you're going to save, three
Yeah,
thousand, four
yeah,
thousand, $5,000.
right.
So,
Yeah, no, I'm saying it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
yeah.
'Cause like the Model E, the in the marketing classes of the last 50 years, everybody talks about when the Mercedes Model E came out.
Mhm.
Because it was like, no, they'd always been, this very expensive car. And all of a sudden you're going to damage the brand by bringing in a car that was, 30% cheaper.
Mhm.
And so the question was, what do you do? How do you do the down market version so that it doesn't interfere with the feeling of the folks that are trying to impress somebody with the more expensive vehicle?
The thing is that the Tesla will be unique in that it will have unsupervised robotaxi,
Yeah, that
right?
too.
So that's going to be the main thing, and that's going to be all that matters. Like I think Stern Batcher says, by you know sometime in 2026, middle of the year, something like that, you won't be really caring about the revenues from the car side, and they are differentiated. They have the luxury vehicle. The fact that your main workhorse revenue is going to be from robotaxi, cybercab, and maybe this lower model version,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Um, if the inside electronics and other stuff are really, really good and the seats are still comfortable,
mhm, mhm,
um, I don't see if the technology's great, then I think it's not going to be a cheap thing. It's
right,
it's going to
right,
be really functional.
right.
So the fact that you're going to that main market volume vehicle, um, I don't think that hurts the brand because again you're coming down, right? It's already said okay, the S and X are great, 3 and Y are great, and now you have these, the 4-seat version of the Cybercab and stuff like that. It's I don't think it'd be a problem, but we're gonna find out. But I think overriding that would be whatever happens on that is only going to be a 1 year phenomenon before you have volume robotaxi and
Right,
cybercab.
right.
So
And
then at that point,
that'll become the greatest marketing challenge of all. I have no idea how to think about this. I mean, when they came out with the Apple the iPhone, and I'm sitting there thinking about the job that Tim Cook has. And it's like the second year, right? They've had a year, they're doing well, but now the new one's going to come out and they're trying to decide how many to make.
Mhm.
And you don't want to make 50 million too many for the launch, and you don't want to make 10 million too few. You don't want to disappoint the customer, and you don't want to have them sit in a warehouse. And that had to be like one of the hardest supply chain decisions ever, in
Mhm.
history to
Yeah.
try to decide how many of those to make. And then it was year after year, every year, you're having to guess right again and again and again, even up till now. Now it's kind of more, maybe you don't need to make as many. It's more on that side of it at this point. So the thing that's going to happen with cybercab and the regular cars is going to be when does it start to really disrupt vehicles entirely? When do people just say, "Yeah, I'll take a cab," you know,
So my belief is about um, 2027, 2028. That's what's that'll happen.
it'll really be really big disruption by 2028.
Yeah, there'll be a pretty huge disruption by 2026 where basically all of the 10 million Tesla vehicles will be able to go into robotaxi mode.
Yeah.
Um, for me, the limitation, and I think we discussed other points, is the charging aspect. That they'll be doing so many miles that they
Yeah.
can only do, 200 billion miles with the system because it would use, if I got it right, 200 billion miles, something in that range, where the charging can only support that much. So then they need to get that
Right.
solution in a big way, which I expect them to push out in 2027, 2028 and get to that, get to the trillion mile number. How quick can they do that? And it's a less about the vehicles because you could do that with 20 million vehicles, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
50,000 miles each to do a trillion miles.
Right.
But it's the charging all those vehicles to that level is the
And you
more
have to charge them, and you got to, and basically you want to charge them between 2 and 5, no, even probably 1 and 4 a.m. or something like that, when at the lowest use time of the day. So it's not like you're trying to charge them all day long so that you can be using that facility kind of in an optimal way. You're having to
mm,
make a massive amount of charging in the middle of the night.
right. So if everything works on the software end, the issue on deployment is less about how many vehicles can I make and how can I logistically keep them charged on all those rides. Yeah,
That's funny. I bet you,
yeah,
I'm sure they've got algos all over the place trying to figure that out.
yeah.
So, and the more obvious one that we've talked about ad nauseum, but there might be people on watching right now who haven't heard us talk about it before, is the question of what happens to the average customer who owns a Model 3.
Mhm.
And it just bought it a year ago. And there's a guy on the phone going, "Hey, I'll pay you 40,000 over a book for I'll pay you 40,000 more than you paid for it." And
Yeah,
you're going, 40,000. Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And at some point, it won't be a question of whether there will be any personal owners of Teslas anymore. It'll just
Mhm.
be a matter of who are the fleet owners of Teslas, because
Right.
the value will be so huge that
Mhm.
individual owners would be crazy to keep their car.
Right, right. Well, not have it in a robotaxi version of the
Yeah,
vehicle
either
to
to put it
operate.
out as a robotaxi themselves
Yeah,
or to sell it to a fleet that wants to put it out as a robotaxi.
right, right. So we have a few more things here so
Okay.
after the
Okay.
sheet molding, there
Yep.
is the partially unboxed process. So making modules. So again, making those components. You can have the main 3 and Y line, and then you have like sub areas where it's like I'm making component, 1, 2, 3, and 4 that will then add in to the only for the new Model Q vehicle.
Hmm.
And Grok estimates you could save 15 to 20%, so possibly even more. Again, how many modules can we make
Mm.
that can be easily integrated into the line,
Right.
which we don't know. Ballpark could be, 15%, could be 20%, but it comparable to the numbers that were in the the sheet molding area. So then we can save another, 15 to 10% labor, $1,500 per car. Um, and then there is working some Tesla bots into it. So adding it all together, 1 to 1.5 hours for the painting, unbox process, 1.5 to 2 hours for each of those modules. Tesla bots just doing some repetitive stuff, not really taking over the process. Could be in the range of 500 to $1,000 worth of savings.
Mm.
Maybe save an hour because we haven't changed everything, right?
Right. Right.
Changing everything can do more, and then that can get us into a 25 to $27,000 vehicle. Um, 10, 15, 20% reductions and that kind of stuff. It's all possible. Lastly, there's some stuff where things can snap together, but you've seen that. But so basically, we could get to the $25,000 vehicle and have substantial two or three major areas of the unbox process tested out in the car, and also get their supply chains on things worked out. I don't think they get into the guts of the wiring and stuff like that. That seems too difficult to do, to get all those modules and to redo a lot of things in batteries and stuff. I don't think we have enough 4680s to make the
Mm,
conversion
mm,
over.
mm.
So it'll be and because we're going to need to make them in three different locations. I see they'll be, making them in Shanghai,
Right,
making them in Austin, making them in Berlin.
right,
Then definitely the Chinese ones will be CATL batteries, being supplied by them, or BYD batteries.
right, right.
And then Austin, maybe we have enough 4680s, depending on how things ramp up, or for some of the versions of it. And then in Berlin, whatever other that battery solution is. So a substantial savings and quite a bit of the unbox process I can see happening with the new car, which hopefully should be out in 2, 3 months.
Yeah, okay. So, and then you see it, like you say, in three factories. So the reason it'll be fairly easy to do it in all three factories is again, we're using existing lines, or we're building another Model 3 or Model Y line, which we already know how to do. Or maybe the model like in Berlin, that second line might be sitting there already, has been sitting there for a while. They just haven't used it yet because
Right.
they didn't get to the numbers they hoped to.
Hmm.
So yeah, and that's going to be the other thing that's going to be super interesting to me over this next, basically at this point, year, less than a year. Model 3s and unboxed cybercabs have to have a place to be made in China.
Hmm.
And I know you and I've talked about it. But they're not adding any more factory space above. And I know they're, making them theoretically the Model Y and Model 3 faster and, maybe they're reducing the footprint or something. We know that they did make some space last year. It was a fairly substantial amount of space when they changed over the system they were using. But it's like, yeah, where are they going to put all this manufacturing stuff?
The thing is, for the third Megapack factory, they took a building built on spec by someone else
Yeah,
for a warehouse and then converted it to their construction.
right,
It seems like, for Austin Gigafactory factory, they it was very customized.
right,
It really wanted a particular way.
right,
Um, for Cybercab, do they need that much customization? Do they? But the thing is, they can just talk to a Chinese builder and just say, build it that way. And they'll say, "Yeah, okay, yeah, we do it." So then they could have someone else build it for them
sure,
to roughly what they wanted to do,
yeah,
and then they could just move into it.
yeah.
So, um,
Or as you point out, they could be building it right now in some kind of a small. It wouldn't have to be that big a factory. It could be a relative, again, big but not massive, but some existing factory that they bought and that nobody would know.
right, that's right. But I'm thinking probably they don't, because they've been acquiring a lot of land near the Gigafact in Shanghai,
Uh-huh.
and because they use that for the Megapack factory.
Right.
So the fact and things are built so fast in China, why wouldn't you build it exactly the way you
Right,
want?
right. Yeah. Put
So,
up
the
and
fact, yeah, it takes 6 months, 9 months, or whatever, and then boom, you have the factory you want. It would be, that's been their pattern so
right,
far.
right. Interesting, interesting. Yeah, okay. I
Okay.
think that's all the questions I have.
Okay. So this is something hopefully we'll see, um, you know, in a short period of time. So the big predictions are that the outside, the sheet molding compound is what the outside is going to look like. It can be used for multiple versions, whether it looks exactly like a four-seat Cybercab or whether it's a version that's molded to look like a Model Y or a compact car or a hatchback. That those things should all be possible from sheet molding compound, where you're forming the parts on the outside and expecting it to come with higher volume and lower cost by having two or three major parts of the unbox process happening and some initial usage of Tesla bot that having a significant financial impact. So that's basically what I'm predicting, and that we be able to get it to below 25,000, maybe not initially,
Mhm, mhm.
but
Right, right.
as things get into volume, certainly by next year, that would happen. So,
Okay. All right. Well, I think you are all by yourself in terms of the concept. I think there's other people that think it might be just a regular cybercab with a steering wheel and pedals, but I don't think anybody else is really thinking in terms of a a four-seat version that is using all the same techniques and approaches
mhm.
as the cybercab. I think you're all by yourself on that one.
Okay, we'll see if I'm right or not. Okay, talk to you next time.